Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome into Soccer Morning on WorldSoccerTalk.com. My goodness, what a day. One of those momentous days in world football for all the wrong reasons. We will get into the news out of Zurich in just a couple of minutes, lining up this program today. Eric Gomez covering Mexican football. He'll join us in just a bit. Plenty to talk about down in Mexico, the Liga playoffs, Carlos Vela, and whether or not he ends up in MLS. That word may come as early as Sunday. Chicharito Hernandez tearing it up in Germany. Piojo at Tijuana and what changes he'll be making there as he attempts to get Xolos back on top of Liga MX. But let's hit the news because, again, it is a momentous day in world football, and again, it's probably for all the wrong reasons. We start with the overnight raid of the Zurich hotel, the same Zurich hotel where arrests were made previously by Swiss officials. They execute a pre-dawn arrest of 12 FIFA officials per word out of Zurich. CONCACAF President Alfredo Hawit and CONMEBOL President Juan Angel Naput are among those arrested. Both of those individuals, FIFA vice presidents. Obviously, we know that Hawit was replacing Jeffrey Webb, who was arrested. This is a debacle, a mess, another situation to deal with for both of these confederations. It seems to be honed in, focused on the Americas, but I think that's probably because of the resources available to the Department of Justice. And make no mistake, the U.S. Department of Justice requested these arrests, and they will be holding a 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time press conference on this raid. The arrest comes just as FIFA has announced approval of a list of reforms. In fact, FIFA is holding a press meeting right now to go over those reforms. We had Dr. Carrard, who's the head of the FIFA Reform Committee, outlining a bunch of reforms using slides to do so, sending acting FIFA President Issa Hayatou into a coma, sending him to sleep anyway. The gentleman fell asleep during the event. So we have this very odd situation where FIFA again has been raided, numerous officials arrested, and yet they continue to go along business as usual, or business with this notion of reform, questions of whether or not these reforms will do any good. Sam Borden of the New York Times reports that these arrests will have no impact on Copa America 2016 if you were concerned about that. All right, so that's the unfolding story of the day. We'll keep an eye on things coming out of Zurich. We'll keep an eye on Sam Borden's Twitter feed, and we'll try to update you as events warrant. Sebastian Giovinco, the 2015 MLS MVP, he wins in a landslide, as you would expect. The first player in league history to score 20-plus goals and provide 10-plus assists. He scored 22 goals and had 15 assists this season. The Italian international was in his first year in the league after joining from Juventus. Kai Kamara finished a distant second. Benny Feilhaber of Sporting Kansas City finishing third. Those were your three finalists for the award. Interesting events in Spain yesterday. In the Copa del Rey, Real Madrid played a player that was probably suspended, and now they could be kicked out of the tournament for fielding said ineligible player. Madrid started Denis Cheryshev against Cadiz in the tournament. Cheryshev should have been ineligible due to 3 yellow cards that he picked up while playing for Villarreal in the Copa del Rey last year. But no one seemed to realize this was happening until he was already on the field. The fans got word there at Cadiz and started chanting, Rafa, check your Twitter feed. That was what I heard on ESPN FC from Sid Lowe last night. Madrid's fate could come down to whether or not Cadiz submits a formal complaint. All signs point to them doing so. So that could be trouble for Rafa Benitez and Real Madrid. Something about a fax machine. I don't know what's going on this morning. We'll keep you updated on the news there. The commercial rights for that 2016 Copa America tournament that I mentioned have been awarded. Remember, they were originally held by a company called Datisa, which was implicated in the corruption that came from that last round of FIFA arrests. The price tag on the original rights was $112 million. This is reportedly a much smaller deal. Soccer United Marketing and IMG have won the bidding on the commercial rights, but this is just another step along the way to that tournament coming together to full fruition. I'm tracking some news out of South America. My friend Gringo Mark on Twitter has already hit me to the fact that there may be There may be some countries who don't take this tournament as seriously as we would like them to, and will send a B team. Let's hope that's not the case. Again, this tournament is only as strong as the teams that show up. If Argentina comes with a B side, Brazil comes with a B side, Chile comes with a B side, it's not going to be nearly as important as it would be otherwise. In the Capital One Cup yesterday, the remaining quarterfinal match, Liverpool crushing Southampton 6-1. Jurgen Klopp with magical fairy dust or something. I don't know. Daniel Sturridge returning from injury to score twice in that romp. Good news for Liverpool as they get back one of their more important goal-scoring players. All right, so again, the FIFA scandal has erupted again. We will keep track of that throughout the morning. We've got this show, then we've got the SiriusXM show. Make sure you tune in if you're a SiriusXM subscriber. Coming up next on Soccer Morning, Eric Gomez will join us to talk about all of the news out of the Mexican soccer world. That includes, again, the Liga playoffs, which are into the semifinals tonight. Carlos Vela and whether or not he ends up in MLS. A couple of teams angling for his signature. I believe the Colorado Rapids are out of that running. No surprise to anybody. Chicharito Hernandez tearing it up in Germany, of course. Piojo now at Tijuana, and whatever else is on the table there in Mexico, where it is there is never a dull moment at all. All right, let's do that. Let's get Eric Gomez on the line. You will join us then. It will be a good time. Stay right there. Soccer Morning, worldsoccertalk.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, we are back on Soccer Morning, and we are joined by a good friend of the program, Eric Gomez. Eric Gomez 86 on Twitter. You can follow him there for all of his current projects, which I'm sure there are many, and they are wonderful. Hey, hi, Eric. How are you?
There are many. Let's hope they're wonderful. But yeah, that's the idea.
We just outlined before we came on the air. We outlined what we're going to talk about. It's all very Mexico focused, and rightfully so. But I have to ask you, since this is all breaking this morning, what you make of the word that we have lost yet another CONCACAF president.
Well, I love the political quotes that we get after these types of situations, and the fact that you have the acting FIFA president nodding off in a press conference, major surgery or not, man. I mean, if I'm having health issues, I'm not showing up to one of those. But the quotes are fantastic. Well, this just shows us that we are in dire need of reforms. I mean, we're down to like the 58th string CONCACAF president at this point, so that's got to be worrying to everybody involved in the confederation. Ideally, you would want somebody, I think, at this point, who's an outsider from the FIFA, CONCACAF, CONMEBOL milieu, who's able to bring a fresh perspective and, is just going to keep his liberty at this point. He's not going to be extradited to the United States for massive corruption charges. I'm still worried about Copa America Centenario, not in the sense that we are not going to enjoy it as fans and as journalists and whatever, just the legality of it and the issues that are going to be ongoing, I think, because of the people who are involved in building these tournaments. So it's just astonishing to see that we're still talking about this months after the fact.
Yeah, Sam Borden from the New York Times, who obviously was on the ground in Zurich for yet another round of arrests, says that his sources say that the Copa America Centenario is not under threat, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to have a bumpy ride from here to when that tournament actually kicks off. I've even heard some word out of South America that there are a couple of countries, at least one country, that is considering bringing a B-side, which obviously takes some sting out of the tournament. I think Sampioli from Chile may not bring his best side. I don't know for sure, but that's something to consider. And then there's the commercial rights and all those murky, dirty things that have brought so many of these figures down. All right, that aside, let's talk about the soccer, the football on the field. It is playoff time in Mexico. The Apertura has ended. We're actually to the semifinal round of the Liga. We haven't had any chance to talk about this, Eric. So give me a picture right now. I know first leg semifinals tonight.
Well, first and foremost, I don't work for the TV company anymore, but 8 p.m. Eastern, America versus Pumas, and then I believe it's 10 p.m. Eastern, Tigres versus Toluca. So find those on your dial. Very good football matches tonight from Mexico. And I think the most interesting thing going into these semifinals is the fact that America, they are the team with the most amount of championships in Mexico. With 12, they could go up to 13. But if you recall, they're playing the FIFA Club World Cup later this month. So what happens if America wins the semifinal against Pumas? You go to a Christmas Eve final. December 24th and December 27th is when the Liga MX finals would be played after America would basically cross the Pacific Ocean twice after going to Japan and facing potentially Barcelona in a FIFA Club World Cup semifinal. So that's an interesting storyline to think that we might actually get championship soccer being played on Christmas Eve. And then the other semifinal, Tigres against Toluca, is a fantastic matchup because there's a lot of just great backroom stuff going on, some great pregame quotes from Tuca Ferretti and Pepe Cardoso, the Toluca manager. These two were actually paired together back, I think, in 2003, 2004, when Tuca was the Toluca manager and Cardoso was the star striker, essentially ran him out of town. So there's some bad blood between those two teams as well. Just great rivalry matches. Again, Tigres and Toluca is not a historical rivalry, but the people involved in this game are going to make it so. And America Pumas, of course, a crosstown derby in Mexico City. There's already been talk about sending about 12 to 15,000 police officers to each of those games. So that just it should be a great great ambiance for people going to the stadiums. but just I think it's strange that in Mexico, especially with the playoff system, you get arguably the four best teams facing each other in a semifinal, and regardless of where they ended up in the league for the regular season, I do believe that that's the case with América, Pumas, Tigres, and Toluca. I think León fans might have something to say about that, but these were the four teams that showed the most amount of consistency. They have the most amount of star power. Just some great games all around for Thursday and Sunday.
Yeah, tonight, as you said, so that the first leg of these two ties at Club America and at Tigres, I would imagine. Is there just you mentioned the police, and that's about rivalry. It's about the fans, certainly. But has there been an effect in Mexico of the Paris terrorist attacks and some of the more stringent security measures we're seeing? In the U.S., we're seeing MLS games where fans are it's taking them hours to get into matches because of pat downs and metal detectors.
Yeah, and I think the Estadio Azteca, to its credit, is one of those places in Mexico City that has always valued security. You are advised, as a journalist, you are advised as a fan even, to get there as soon as you possibly can, with maybe 1, 2, 3 hours before the game, just so you go through the security protocol and you're not hassled and delayed by police and you miss part of the game. 12 to 15,000 police officers, I think, is mainly to keep the opposing fan bases at bay. Mm-hmm. But I also think that a little bit more. I think it's quieter in Mexico. That this isn't a just a huge news story just yet. I think most of it has been limited to Twitter banter between the regular common folk, but there is a underlying threat there. The fact that ISIS and all these nasty people have named Mexico as part of their worldwide list of targets has to be weighing on Mexico City government officials and Mexican officials in general. So I would expect the people who we're going to this game later tonight to be held up by police pretty significantly. And in Monterrey, that's been the norm for years, and I think everybody is well aware of the drug violence issues that Mexico has had over the course of the last decade, a little bit longer than that now. And security at stadiums is always an issue in Mexico, and I think that it's not going to be something that weighs on people's minds as they go to the stadium tonight, specifically regarding ISIS and regarding the terrorist threats. Okay. I think they're just used to having to wait a while to get inside the stadium.
You said something. Obviously you outlined how Club America, by virtue of their CONCACAF championship, is participating in the Club World Cup, and how the title game for the Liga could be pushed to Christmas Eve. That's how would that go over? I mean, I'm just for culturally, how would that go over?
I think my staff is going to be thrilled that they're going to have to work on Christmas Eve. No, I mean, obviously it creates a situation that has never happened before in Mexico. I think every time that we've seen a team go into the Mexican League playoffs and then have to go to the Club World Cup, it's kind of a given that they're sending their B team to the league playoffs, which is a weird thing to even contemplate at this point, but it has happened in the past. I think America is one of those teams that, with their unparalleled ambition, they're not going to give anything away. Unfortunately for them, I think Pumas is going to take advantage of that situation. I think that they're going to try and run them ragged in this first leg at the Estadio Azteca to try and bring that into play psychologically. I think everybody expects Pumas to be the favorite in this semifinal, not just because America has to travel to Japan a few days after the semifinal, but because they're the better team. I think they're well-rounded on offense. They have a great defensive unit. Their goalkeeper has been lights out, which is a weird thing to say because Picolín is one of those guys that is constantly trolled by Mexican fans. So even within the coaching ranks, you have to expect Memo Vázquez, who has been there before, who's won a title, to have a slight advantage over Nacho Ambriz. But if this does go down, I think the league has to rethink the fact that the game would be played on the 24th. I mean, at least make it 23 and 26.
Right.
Go to go to a more MLS-like format where it's weekend to weekend. I don't know. I mean, you're going to be stepping on some people's toes and some people's vacation plans anyway. Might as well make it so that we get the best possible games. I mean, I don't know what the league expects from America after they basically have to circumvent the world twice to get to that point. You're going to get some jet-lagged players. You're going to get a level of play that is pretty much not worthy of a league final. So, knowing the league, I think we can expect something else to go down as we get closer to that, if indeed it does happen.
So there you go. A little bit of a scheduling issue for the league as they come down to the end here. And obviously, if Pumas wins, it doesn't matter. It fixes the problem for them. So certainly, I imagine some people there at Liga MX are hoping for that. All right, let's move on. We're looking forward to those games tonight. The first leg, as Eric said, of the Liga semifinals with Club America hosting Pumas and Tigres hosting Toluca. Let's move on to one of the bigger rumors bouncing around the MLS world right now, Eric, and it's the fate of Carlos Vela and whether or not he ends up in MLS. We heard rumors that the Rapids were talking to him. There were lots of reasons to be very cynical and question those rumors, mostly on the Rapids end of things. Why on earth would they spend that much money? They've never spent that much money before. What have you heard? Because this has gone a little bit back and forth. In fact, I think his agent may have even made a statement that he wasn't sure it was going to happen now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about this, and I think the Colorado Rapids angle is Claudio Lopez. And I understand that Claudio Lopez knows the organization, but he also knows Mexican football. He played for America for about 3 years. He knows Carlos Vela. He knows what he's able to bring to the table. And, what better way to make a splash if you're Colorado than to bring in a guy that MLS has clamored for over the last few years, alongside Chicharito and alongside Giovanni Dos Santos. Even then, you have to be skeptical of the way that they would structure that contract, whether they'd be able to pay the reported $8 million a year that Vela is asking for. And not just that, but the 15 million euro release clause that Real Sociedad is seeking to let Vela out of his contract. They're not negotiating with any team. They're practically going out publicly and privately to teams saying, you need to pay 15 million euros to get Carlos Vela. And that's the way it's going to be. Certainly there are ways that Carlos Vela can instigate a move elsewhere, whether it be MLS or whether it be somewhere else in Europe. But I don't think that we're going to get to that point. Now, the report that came out yesterday that I quoted and I tweeted out is by a guy named Jesus Hernandez. He works in Guadalajara. He has excellent contacts. As you may know, Carlos Vela still has family in Guadalajara. He played there. He lived there when he was at Chivas' academy. And his report is that this weekend, Eduardo Hernandez, Carlos Vela's agent, who is also Chicharito's agent, will be in Columbus for MLS Cup. And he's not talking directly to Don Garber. He's talking to Lino Di Cuolo, the MLS vice president, who has basically been taking these negotiations on from MLS's standpoint, is what my good friend Jesus is saying. The idea is that he's going to meet with MLS, Eduardo Hernandez, and they're going to talk about the three teams that are supposedly in the running for Carlos Vela. What's interesting about this report is that it doesn't mention Colorado, which would be somewhat logical given what we know about the Rapids. Vela's camp is asking for $8 million a year, which would obviously make him the highest paid player in MLS. And it might sound crazy, but I also tweeted this out yesterday. Other attractions and lifestyle and the NBA are factors that Carlos Vela is weighing upon his move to MLS. So you talk about San Jose, well, he's apparently a big Warriors fan. So that's something that might sway his decision. He's interested in playing in San Jose for that. Chicago and I think the Red Bulls were mentioned. I spoke to Taylor Twellman yesterday. He mentioned that his sources told him that Red Bull was not in play. Again, these are just reports that are coming in from different people, different sources, different situations. But I do think that we will see Carlos Vela playing in MLS next season, regardless of the team, regardless of the amount of money that MLS and that particular franchise ends up paying him. So the key thing that we should, keep monitoring.
Yeah.
And if they get 15 million euros to Real Sociedad, that just shows you the level of the amount of Mexican fans that they're after, and just the importance that they're placing on U.S. men's national team players and Mexican national team players. It's fantastic to see MLS or any league this side of the Atlantic be that serious about bringing that caliber of player over.
That's where I wanted to go with this discussion, Eric. Is what does this say about MLS ambition? And it's an interesting situation, because if MLS was truly ambitious, I mean, we'd be talking about big money for numerous players, not just strategically placed players like Giovanni Dos Santos, Carlos Vela. There's certainly the U.S. men's national team guys. This is again strategic ambition. This is, well, we want to maximize, or we want to do whatever we can to capture a certain segment of the American soccer watching public, and that a lot of those people are of Mexican extraction. Let's go sign Giovanni Dos Santos in his prime. Let's go get Carlos Vela in his prime, and we're willing to pay not only the $8 million salary, which would, like you said, would make him the highest paid MLS player, but 15 million euros, which as of current exchange rates is something like 16 million bucks. So it's not 1-to-1, but it's fairly close. That money's not coming from the Rapids. That money's not coming from the Fire. That money's not coming from the Red Bulls. That money's coming from MLS. So it's a little bit like the Clint Dempsey situation. Well, I'm not sure exactly what the mechanics were on Giovanni Dos Santos, but they may have been in the same area, where it's the league taking on the financial responsibility of getting him here.
I think with Giovanni, it was just somewhere around $7 million or $8 million. It was not that. I mean, didn't even get into double digits, but it's still a significant amount of money. And, you're definitely talking about a league that is investing in its future, and you're talking about a league that is trying to raise its profile and shedding that retirement league label. You're not going after 34, 35, 36-year-olds. You're going after guys who are 26 and 27. Giovinco is a huge example of strategic investment, as you would put it. Getting a guy like Carlos Vela in his prime is fantastic, but I think that there is a certain amount of skepticism when it comes down to the common Mexican fan as to what Vela is actually going to bring to the table. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to come to the United States and not perform to his level, but there certainly is a certain amount of worry that he's not going to take this seriously. I think everybody still has Rafa Marquez in the back of their minds when we talk about star Mexican players coming to MLS. I think Giovanni Dos Santos has not been a disappointment by any stretch, but he's a guy who has struggled with injuries. He's a guy who has been inconsistent for the entirety of his career, and his potential is just that at this point, potential. Carlos Vela is a guy who has been fantastic for Real Sociedad over the last 3 years. So if he doesn't bring that same standard of play to MLS, then you're going to be raising some eyebrows, and you're going to be asking some questions fairly quickly. I think the eyes of the entire league are going to be placed on a guy like Vela if he does indeed sign. So regardless of the ambition that the league might have towards signing these types of players, I think you also have to take the profile into account. If you gave me the option of signing Carlos Vela or Chicharito, I would sign Chicharito based on just his level of commitment and the fact that football, soccer, whatever, is the only thing on his mind. Carlos Vela is a guy who has said publicly, I don't like soccer. I don't like to watch the games on TV. I don't especially like to train. It's my job. I treat it as such, et cetera, et cetera. And I would much rather be watching the NBA or playing on my PlayStation. And so essentially the answers that you would get from a 20-year-old college student. But Vela is that type of guy. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and it's just so strange to watch him. He's not there. If you don't grab his attention within the first 5-10 seconds of a conversation, he's not there. So I think it'll be very interesting because you'll get this mercurial personality coming to a league that will be hinging on his every move, and regardless of where he's playing, he'll be a magnet for media, he'll be a magnet for fans, and he'll be a magnet for guys like you and me who love to talk about this type of stuff. Yeah,
and look, I mean, as you said, interesting personality, and that indicates a certain amount of risk on the part of MLS and whatever team signs him that, on paper, you go, all right, 26-year-old Carlos Vela, we know about the history with the Mexican national team. But even if you take that into account, it makes a lot of sense to sign this guy and bring him into the league. But with that personality, with those personality quirks, he's going to take. They're going to have to handle him carefully and make sure that they are. I mean, this has been true of his entire career. Make sure that he's interested and motivated and comfortable, and that is, to me, that's the biggest challenge with a guy like Carlos Vela, because you don't want to spend $16 million on a transfer and $8 million on salary and have him end up being an absolute disaster.
Right, and I think with that amount of money coming into play, I mean, you're not going to sign him to a one-year contract. So I think the overall deal is, again, we're talking about max salary here. Talk about 3 years at $24 million total. That's a $40 million commitment that the league would be making for one player. Your expectation is going to be higher than anybody else. Giovinco, Pirlo, David Villa, anybody. It's not going to be like anything that you've ever seen, maybe except maybe for Beckham. And we all know that there were always questions asked about David Beckham and his level of play in his 6 years with the Galaxy. So I think it's just going to be very interesting to see how this all pans out, because in my mind they're not going to pay him $8 million a year. There were similar things being talked about when Giovanni Dos Santos was nearing the league, and I think that this is all just agent talk. You're trying to just play up the angle that this is a guy that you need to pay a premium to get. So why not talk about him being the highest paid player in MLS? There's another angle to consider here, and I think that MLS is going after foreign TV markets. We've seen the Don Garber quotes, the interviews that he's given out, playing up the fact that we're reaching Latino audiences within the United States, we're reaching European audiences, we're reaching African audiences, etc. Mexico is very interested in bringing MLS to Mexican TV screens as a primetime product. And if you're able to get Giovanni Dos Santos, Carlos Vela, maybe even Chicharito in a couple of years after he's done with Bayer, then you're going to have a very attractive product to bring to Mexican TV screens. And we all know that Televisa and TV Azteca pay a lot of money to Liga MX for individual team rights. This would be a league package, and I think that you would be able to get a great amount of money from Mexican TV markets to make that happen. So, from a soccer standpoint, it could be great. It could be terrible. From a business standpoint, I think this is all going to pan out in MLS's favor in the short term, in the midterm. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. And I know for fans, it's just going to be exciting to have that type of guy in the league. So here's hoping he doesn't disappoint.
Now, a lot of people will say that, signing Dos Santos, signing Vela is sort of, the opening acts for an attempt to get Javier Hernandez into this league eventually. Now, right now, he has no need to be jumping across the Atlantic and joining MLS because he's tearing it up in Germany. Let's just check in briefly here, because it's been quite the saga. I mean, obviously, the move from Guadalajara to Manchester United was of immense, of immense importance, both for Mexican football, for Chicharito himself. He had some success there. It started to go poorly. We had the Real Madrid loan, and he's found himself again. What is it about Germany, specifically in the Bundesliga, and this team that fits Chicharito Hernandez?
Well, I think you can get that type of information from his agent, Eduardo Dunn, the same guy who's working the Carlos Vela deal with MLS. They talked about how he has the full support of the board, full support of the manager, and full support of the team, of his teammates, which is obviously something that he had never had before. At Manchester United, he had a fantastic first season, and after that, he just kind of faded away. At Real Madrid, he was obviously a secondary player, and now he's the guy in Germany. I think that is what Chicharito was seeking over the course of his European career. I think that at some point he felt that he could be the guy at Manchester United alongside Wayne Rooney, and it just didn't pan out. Obviously, at Real Madrid, he took the opportunity to just kind of prove himself at the highest level, and it did, worked out partially for him, I would say. But now that he's at a Champions League caliber team, Bayer Leverkusen, a team that is obviously, with Bayern Munich, being what they are at this point, they're not going to challenge for the Bundesliga, but they can obviously, hang with them and be at the top of the league or close to it. that's the type of situation that I think Hernandez was craving for over the last 4 years, basically. He's a guy who is just very sensitive to media attention, very sensitive to what the fans have to say about him. And even in Mexico, it's a polarizing thing to talk about. If you talk about Chicharito, you're either apparently in love with him or you want him to fail and crash out. When people caught wind in Mexico that he might be going to MLS, Orlando City, as we all know, was the team in question earlier this summer, it kind of struck a nerve. And I think people understood at that point that everybody was in play. Mexican national team players were in play. I think Chicharito understands that he has a great opportunity to go to MLS basically at any time during his career and have that same type of ambiance, have that same type of acceptance from the fans and from the media that he's currently enjoying in Germany. Now, this is a guy who, again, to the contrary of Vela, or to the contrast of Vela, is all about his playing career. His level of dedication, his level of motivation is insane. And I think that he wants to be at the highest level, Champions League caliber team for a first-rate league in Europe for as long as he possibly can. I don't expect a guy like Chicharito to go anywhere outside of that realm, outside of that bubble for the next 3 to 5 years, depending on his level of play. However, we might see him at the tail end of his prime in MLS or in Mexico or wherever he decides to go after Bayer Leverkusen, fairly soon. He's 20, I think he's 27. How bad can he be at 30? Barring injuries, I think this is a player who still has a lot to give for the national team and for any club team that he might be able to contribute to. So if the offers keep rolling in from MLS, I think they're going to break him at some point. I think he's going to accept an offer to come play in the United States, especially when he's got so many national teammates who are opting to join MLS. I still don't believe that we're going to see him go to MLS before the next World Cup, for instance. So this is just a waiting game. I think eventually they'll get their man, but it's not going to be as simple or as clear cut as one might think.
Yeah. In the meantime, absolutely on fire at Leverkusen. In fact, it was the joke was, oh wait, he didn't score. He's in a rut. He can't score anymore. But of course, it's all because Chicharito has been so successful in Germany so far. All right, we got a couple of minutes left here with you, Eric, before I have to let you go. I want to touch on some other league topics for teams not involved in the playoffs at this point. Again, we're down to our final four, first leg tonight in the semifinals. One of the bigger stories is Miguel Herrera, Piojo Herrera at Tijuana. This is an interesting experiment. Obviously, he's a guy known for a particular style of play and a particular set of enthusiasms. Does he fit at Tijuana, and what can he do at Xolos?
Yeah, I think he does fit, and I think we have to realize that even though Xolos have been terrible for the last year and a half, they have one of the richer people in Latin America signing the checks. So I think that for whatever reason, a lot of people talked about how long and how expensive the stadium work was in Tijuana. A lot of people were talking about how they were tied up with some pretty bad contracts signed during the first couple of years since they came up from the second division in Mexico. But this is definitely a team that can splash some cash and build a pretty nice roster for Piojo Herrera, a guy who's used to that type of success with teams like America and Monterrey. He's obviously got something to prove. He's coming off just a mixed bag as the Mexican national team manager. The honeymoon lasted, I would say, about 10 months, and then after that, it was just a whirlwind of media controversy after media controversy. He's shaking up that roster, and I wouldn't expect them to contend for this next tournament. I mean, he would just the mechanics of it, getting 7-8 new players in, getting 7-8 new old players out is going to be very difficult on any team, especially when the next tournament starts in January. But he's going to turn them into a playoff team and an instant contender in Liga MX and in CONCACAF. If he's able to parlay his time in Tijuana into another league title, then I think his expectation is that he'll get another national team offer, whether it's a CONCACAF team, the United States, anybody in Central America, etc., or he might be able to get a job in Europe. This is a guy who I think really went past the Mexico-U.S. bubble when it comes to media attention and fan attention in Brazil 2014. You might remember that little campaign that some English fans had to bring him in as the national team manager for England. I think in his mind, he does think that at 46 years old, 47 years old, he's still a prime candidate to go and coach a club team in Europe, whatever country that might be, or to pick up another national team offer and continue his career there. The expectation is that he remain in Tijuana for at least a year. So it's not a very long-term commitment. I think that if he's able to bring the type of intensity and bring the type of attractive soccer and the success that he had at America, for instance, then the offers will keep rolling in. It's a great situation for him to be in. I think, I can't understate or overstate rather how attractive it is to live and play in Tijuana. You've got the U.S. border, you've got San Diego, one of the nicest cities in the world, just across the border. And, it's been joked about, it's been talked about for years. Tijuana is basically Mexico's MLS franchise. Mm-hmm. You're able to bring in a different type of player and you're able to bring in a different type of fan just because of your geographic location. The stadium is fantastic. The fan base is fantastic. It's going to be a great ride for me at Tijuana if the results come in, and I think there's going to be a good amount of patience for him if the transformation is not immediate.
Look, I think a lot of attention on that club. Not only have we been paying attention, have Americans been paying attention, especially Americans who maybe wouldn't otherwise take an interest in Liga MX. We're going to be paying attention because it's Tijuana, because they have a tradition of having American players, because they are so close to the border and have curried American fans, but also now because of Miguel Herrera there. I mean, it just amps up the entertainment factor by a dozen percent.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic for fans to watch. I think this was just a very savvy move by the Tijuana board to bring him in, and the amount of money that they're paying him is it's a good amount of money. So he's the highest paid manager in Mexico at this point, and I think that if he's able to bring the type of success that he's been able to bring other teams along his career, then we'll see just an extra amount of attention being put on Tijuana, which is something that I understand the owners are definitely in dire need of. It's going to be a great ride.
Eric Gomez covering Mexican soccer. Follow him on Twitter at Eric Gomez86 for all of the news out of Mexico, his insight on world football, plus much, much more. Sometimes he and I go after each other. It's a fun time. Eric, appreciate the time as always. Good to talk to you, man. Hopefully we'll get you back after the semifinals, maybe touch on whenever the Liga final might be.
Absolutely. I'll be glad to.
There you go. There's Eric Gomez. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll open up the phone lines. Talk to you. It's Thursday. There's the FIFA scandal. We've got U.S. Soccer statement on that. Information coming soon. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com.
I'll read the book you like. I'll read that stupid poem. I can't get enough of myself.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
We're back on a Thursday edition of Soccer Morning. Phone lines are now open. 646-832-3909 is the phone number. Rocking my LA Riot shirt right now. This thing is going to be a collector's item. I swear. One day, this thing's going to have value it's going to be higher than the amount of material used to make it. LA Riot from my favorite TV show, Matador, which is no longer with us. Rip Matador. Rip Matador. We are following the developing story out of Zurich as more FIFA officials have been arrested. FIFA going through some convulsions of potential reform. In the aftermath of that, we've got a U.S. soccer statement on the arrests there in Zurich. Today's event, involving individual members of CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, in no way pierce the integrity of the rigorous safeguards of the United States Soccer Federation required before agreeing to host Copa America Centenario that ensure the tournament is organized and conducted in a way that is open, transparent, and above reproach. The new executive committee that was created to govern the tournament does not include these individuals, and they were never in a position to make decisions that would adversely impact those high standards. As the LOC for the tournament, the United States Soccer Federation remains fully focused on the organization and operation of Copa America Centenario and conducting the tournament in the most professional and highly principled manner possible. Basically, they're saying, hey, don't worry about that tournament. We're all good to go. I don't know if that's going to assuage any fears that U.S. soccer is touched by the continuing corruption or the unfolding corruption scandal. We can't be sure of anything at this point. There will be no surprises. If you hear X official has been arrested, you will not be surprised because it is impossible at this point, with the depth of this corruption scandal, to be shocked by anything. Why on earth would you be shocked to hear somebody's name connected to some federation you're aware of has been arrested, has been implicated, has turned evidence, become an informant? None of that would surprise anybody at this point, because that's the depth of the FIFA scandal. I mentioned the reform process again this morning. Dr. Carrard, the chairman of the FIFA Reform Committee, held this very long, very boring PowerPoint presentation on the potential reforms. There's stuff in there about better female representation. That's a good thing, although it doesn't go far enough. That's pretty clear. There is stuff about money in and out. And then for some reason, oh, wait, I know exactly why. For some reason, they decided to throw in the potential of a 40-team World Cup. And, of course, you're like, well, why do you need to do that? Well, they don't. But it does begin the process of trying to distract from the continuing nonsense that's coming out of those chambers in Zurich. By putting in a 40-team World Cup into reform. Reform. It's not reform. That's throwing a bone to some federations who may find themselves in opposition to FIFA and now may not. If you know what I'm saying. It's certainly meant as a distraction for the media. The idea that we throw out a 40-team World Cup and more people focus on that than focus on all of these other things. Maybe they don't notice that our reforms don't go far enough. Maybe they don't notice that the reforms don't have the teeth they need to make real difference. There's a 36-member FIFA executive committee. They're raising the number of FIFA executive committee members. Now, on the face of it, that's meant to spread out that responsibility, potentially keep power from being consolidated by certain individuals within that body. But at the same time, you're raising the number of paid positions in that particular body and opening it up for more corruption. I mean, it seems self-serving on that face. I'm looking at this PowerPoint slide. The path forward. Manage the challenges. Restore credibility. Recover and consolidate. I mean, it reads, if you've ever worked for a corporation, if you've ever been a part of a company that has a lot of employees, requires a lot of management, has vice presidents and presidents and all of these people, and if you've ever been an employee of a company like that, you know exactly what this is all about. This is rearranging the deck chairs. This is not at least it doesn't seem as though this is real reform. It feels like reorganization. I made a joke not that long ago to somebody about how the president of a corporation and the management team of a corporation, really, in order to justify their position and their salary, every 6 months or so, maybe that's a little fast, but it depends on the corporation, goes through a reorganization. We're gonna fix. We've got issues of efficiency. We're gonna move some things around. We're gonna change the responsibilities. You have a new boss, and that boss has a new department, and we're changing the titles of everybody. And it's not. It doesn't change anybody's job at the lower levels. If you're one of the people in the trenches, one of the grunts doing the actual work, it changes nothing about your job. But it makes everybody feel good that we're moving things around, and that this vice president is now in charge of a new initiative to blah, blah, blah. Doesn't do anything. And that's what this reads like. Get the reforms approved. Manage the legal challenges. Ensure operational delivery. Presidential election. Restore credibility. Under this heading, restore credibility. Implement reforms. Strengthen governance and standards. Rebuild reputation and trust. Re-energize commercial program. That one's important. Okay. Recover and consolidate. Complete the commercial program for 2018. That's super important. Got to get that done. Got to get all that money in the house. Deliver a successful 2018 World Cup in Russia. Be recognized as modern, trusted professional as a modern, trusted professional organization. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Let's go to our man Robert out in LA. What's up, Robert?
Hey, good morning, Jason.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, I wanted to change the subject real fast. I know this whole FIFA thing's taking over, is dominating the soccer news waves, but I want to talk about yesterday's comments Don Garber made. He was out promoting the MLS Cup, which I thought was a good thing. You know how it's called about cross promoting, but he was on one of these shows, and then the last thing he did was talk about the MLS Cup. They were like talking about, well, it's very interesting because they're actually talking about the FIFA thing before this happened. So I don't know if that's coincidence or anything, but they do this thing that I've noticed is where they talk about the popularity of soccer, because he's still bringing up the World Cup in Brazil, which is a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and he's saying like soccer only gets bigger every 4 years, and I was just like, can we talk about the MLS Cup? Like the last thing they did was actually talk about the actual teams. They talk about like the popularity of soccer. They talk about Ronaldo or past players from the past, or like 4 years ago. They talk about Maradona and Johan Cruyff, and I was just like, and at the very end, they finally say, all right, thank you, Don Garber, for coming. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, the MLS Cup is this Sunday.
Yeah, I don't necessarily blame Don Garber. It's not. I mean, he goes on these shows and he's got these. These people don't care. They don't pay attention. They don't know much about the game. And as I've consistently said, eventually these people will age out, and eventually they'll be replaced by people who do know soccer. But for the time being, we still have to deal with a bunch of football guys who the best they can do when they ask the commissioner of MLS a question is to say, how popular is soccer going to be? And is soccer, have we reached that moment when soccer becomes really popular? And what is it going to take for MLS to be a big, I mean, those questions matter to them because they cannot see they don't have the understanding of the league to say, well, what kind of game are we going to get on Sunday, and who should we watch for? And those are obvious questions, but for them, it's still about soccer's popularity because they don't see soccer as breaking through, which is the wrong attitude because it's not. I think we've moved past this notion of soccer breaking through and becoming mainstream. And what we've got now is that soccer is widening its niche or widening its portion of fan interest in a way that runs parallel to the mainstream, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and I know you've done this because I've been for a while, and you've gone on other radio shows, so you've had this experience when you have to talk to a non-soccer guy. It just, I looked at all these quotes and then like he couldn't you relate. I know like MLS is only 20 years old, so that connection factor isn't there yet. But one of these guys he was talking to, since the finals in Columbus, Ohio, and one of the guys he was talking about is from Ohio, I thought you can use that to relate to people and say like, hey, small market thing. But he was just saying like, what the U.S. national team did in Brazil was great, and if you want to see those favorite players, you can watch them here. And I'm like, that's not exactly true because none of them were there, but it's just this like I just thought we were past this notion of the popularity of soccer, or talking about or trying to relate with like an old player like Pele or Maradona. Because I know that's who they know. Because they don't know they don't know Higuain or Kai Kamara or Diego Valeri.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit. That's the thing that bothers me most about this, Robert, is that it takes 5 minutes of research. I mean, there's stuff. Okay, I do my best to know everything to know something about everything I talk about here on this show. But the reason we have guests, the reason that we reach out to people who have better knowledge is so that I can educate myself as everybody else gets some insight from somebody who actually pays attention, right? So, but it takes, even if there's something I don't know, there's plenty of stuff that I don't have a full understanding of, but it takes me 5 minutes of research. I go and I find one article, I Google one article, whatever, the FIFA stuff today, or Mexicans. I'm talking to Eric Gomez. Okay, what's happening in the Liga playoffs? In order to sound at least knowledgeable enough to set him up, all I have to do is one Google search. And that's the frustrating thing for guys like, Mike and Mike. Do a Google search. Find out who's on these teams. Say, oh, I've heard Darlington Nagbe's an exciting player. Tell us about him. That's it. That's all you have to do. Why can't they do that?
I think it's this phrase that my parents always taught me. It's that it's easier to do something, but it's easier not to do it. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I got you.
It's just a life lesson that I learned. And I know you got other callers. I'll just say one more thing, Jason. It's like, whenever you hear these things, whenever they say like a certain player from like a previous generation, and I've noticed it, whenever they say like Johan Cruyff, I think that's like the key word that the person has no idea anything about soccer. When they use, I've heard of him.
Yeah, right, exactly. Robert, appreciate the call, man. I do have to move on.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, there goes Robert in LA talking about Don Garber and the media blitz. Let's go to Roberto in Connecticut. What's up, Roberto?
Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Well, that's good to hear. I just heard about the FIFA scandal at like 2 a.m. when I got the notification, and I was a bit shocked, honestly. Don't you think? What's your opinion on all this?
I mean, I'm not shocked. I'm not, and I said it before. How can you possibly be shocked anymore by anything that happens when it comes to FIFA? And again, if and I'm not implicating. I mean, I'm not throwing out accusations. I don't know that anybody's involved. But if we heard that somebody in this country, somebody with the Mexican Federation, somebody that we've heard of and that we know and that has an important role to play in American soccer was indicted, how would we be surprised? I wouldn't.
Honestly, yeah, you're right. I think you have a point there. But yeah, it's just incredible how all the confederation presidents are going now. The CONCACAF, CONMEBOL. I mean, what's next? It's Platini. Platini obviously has his own problems. Who knows who's next? What does this mean for FIFA now in the future?
I don't know who the next CONCACAF president's going to be. That we got to figure that part out. I mean, it's when you're a kid and you go through like civics class or whatever, you learn about you learn about the line of succession from the president. It goes president, vice president, speaker of the house, all down the line. And then there's like a third, fourth, fifth guy that nobody really thinks about. That's where we are with CONCACAF now. We're getting to the point where it's like, who's next? I don't even know who's next.
Do you think Sunil Gulati might be in charge of CONCACAF?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's. I don't think he's the guy. I'm not sure who the guy is. I'm going to check in with some people who have a better understanding of the line of succession there. But I don't think that that Gulati's in line for that. I think it's probably. In fact, I saw our friend Jonathan Tannenwald on Twitter say it might be Ted Howard, who's an American and right now is the Deputy General Secretary for CONCACAF.
Oh, wow.
So it might be him.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he succeeded Chuck Blazer. So yeah, and then obviously he actually succeeded Chuck Blazer, and then he was replaced by Enrique Sanz, and we know what happened to Enrique Sanz. He was pulled in by all the indictments. So you don't know. Yeah, I don't know, Roberto. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a messed up world we have there, that's for sure. And I'm just on my second question. I was wondering on your thoughts of Real Madrid fielding an ineligible player.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Real Madrid's fielding
Uh,
that player,
I
Dennis
mean,
Christian.
So ridiculous, right? I mean, I don't that kind of oversight cannot happen, and I don't know if it's on Rafa. I don't know if it's on somebody in the office there at Real Madrid. I don't know if it's on the player himself. I mean, I think you should be aware of these things. I know you want to play, but you also don't want your team to be eliminated from the tournament because they broke the rules. I just don't think there's any excuse at all.
I think someone had to remind Benitez of that, but now more pressure is coming at the club right now, don't you think?
If they get
because of the loss.
If they get kicked out of Copa del Rey, especially in the light of the loss in the Clásico, and they're falling behind the league. I mean, again, the Champions League is going well, and I've heard. I mean, we talked to David Cartledge yesterday. He suggested that Rafa stays on as long as they don't crash out of the Champions League. But this Copa del Rey thing is so ridiculous that you could see him going down for it as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Appreciate
Thanks,
the call.
Jason.
Good stuff from Roberto up in Connecticut. Both those guys have shirt numbers. I didn't reference them. If you got a shirt number, call in and tell me your shirt number when you call. Because I think there's an element of pride here. And by the way, maybe that's what I should do. We should get they should say Soccer Morning on them. But maybe I should be responsible for making shirts, Soccer Morning shirts for those of you who have been issued shirt numbers. And maybe we should put the Riot logo on them, just in memory of the show Matador and the story. The reason I wore this today, I was thinking it's been sitting in my office for a while, and I haven't worn it in a while. And the reason I decided to put it on is because it fits what's happening in Zurich right now. We had this show, which was about a guy undercover with the CIA as a player in a soccer club whose owner was part of a global conspiracy. And I'm thinking that just works today. That just works within the whole FIFA nonsense. Let's go to Andrew in Tennessee.
Hey, this is Andrew. I'm curious, we talk a lot about, need independent reform and all those things. What do you think it's really going to take for CONCACAF or U.S. soccer, but specifically CONCACAF, to actually get somebody independent? And does everyone have to get arrested before that happens? Or,
well, who's that person? I mean, I heard Eric Gomez say it, and I'm sitting there thinking, who is that guy? I mean, what do you hire? Do you get somebody like, he was put up there as a potential FIFA presidential candidate because of his independence. But do you suggest a guy like Mitt Romney to be CONCACAF president? I mean, who are we talking about here?
I mean, yeah, that's of course, I guess, question number two. I would think there's a lot of people who have been successful in the business world. I mean, politics is a whole other matter, but that would be an option as well. But it just feels like as long as we have people from inside, it's just an unending stream of not only corruption, but of arrests and bad publicity. I mean, this is just repeated the same story over and over.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that's the troubling thing, because, again, the end is not in sight. I mean, do we see that FIFA has this big presentation about reforms today in the aftermath of more people being arrested, and it still does not feel like we're making any progress, and it still does not feel like there's an end to this that results in everyone being happy about the way soccer is governed. It just doesn't. There cannot be an end that's going to satisfy everybody, because the only thing that even seems like it might be a step in the right direction is tearing the whole thing down. But if you tear the whole thing down, you cause a host of other problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you ever see, and this is obviously all conjecture, but FIFA for stepping in and appointing somebody in some of these really, really troubled areas, just like CONMEBOL or CONCACAF, to keep getting their president indicted and arrested?
They're not supposed to do that, because these confederations are supposed to be operating independently of FIFA. In fact, there were a lot of suggestions today after the arrests that FIFA would just paint this as a CONCACAF CONMEBOL issue and not as a FIFA issue. And that, this isn't FIFA corruption. This is specifically America's corruption, and that's their problem. I mean, that's part of the issue with the governance of world football, is that all these things, all these lines cross and all these bodies share members, but they want to, when the rubber meets the road, or when the crap hits the fan, they want to distance themselves from each other as a means to protect themselves. And that's, as long as there's not going to be a recognition of responsibility, we're not going to make any progress.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. And on a slightly related note, how long till this poor hotel in Zurich stops getting any business from anybody from FIFA?
What is it called? I can't remember. And my French is not good enough that I trust. I mean, it's okay. But Bauer Olac in Zurich. Yeah, you know what? FIFA may have to change their hotel of choice. Just ridiculous stuff. Appreciate the call. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Thank you.
There goes Andrew in Tennessee. Wrap this up, this edition of Soccer Morning, with Mike in Philly. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason. I actually wanted to change directions a little bit, get away from the FIFA headaches. Wanted to know your opinion on the homegrown player issues and how a lot of them are fizzling out, not really pushing through, getting legitimate minutes or panning out. What's the solution there? And is it an issue that these kids are burning out, or is it just natural? Should we allow them to they get their shot? If they don't work, hey, you get cut, your career's over.
Well, okay, look, the clubs have to do right by the players. I mean, we've seen plenty of clubs who have used the homegrown player system for lack of a better way of describing it, PR reasons. I mean, it's just a matter of, oh, look, we've signed a kid out of our academy, woohoo, celebrate us. And then those kids don't go anywhere, don't do anything, don't contribute, don't get a chance to play and develop, and then they get cut 3 years later, and we're supposed to forget, we're supposed to still be crediting that team with developing a player. That's ridiculous. MLS has to do a better job of incentivizing teams to play these kids, and maybe the USL partnership still needs to mature to the point where these kids get an opportunity. I mean, you look at somebody like Jose Villarreal with the LA Galaxy. It came up. They signed him to the senior team. He made an immediate impact. We got excited about him, but he clearly wasn't ready. And consistency was a problem, and maybe he wasn't ready to be a full professional at that level. He went on loan to Mexico. That didn't do anything for him. Then the USL partnership kicked in. They start Los Dos. He gets an opportunity to play, and now he's being touted as a guy that could potentially replace Giassi's Zardes should they sell Giassi's Zardes. So that works. That's a good path. Are enough teams exploring that path and getting do enough teams have the means to give those players that opportunity? Rather than signing a kid at 18, throwing him into your senior squad, obviously he doesn't count against your salary cap, so you're then able to spend money on other players. I mean, that's the thing. It's good that a homegrown player doesn't hit your cap, but if you're just using that as a means to free up money so you can spend more on another player, then that doesn't do the homegrown player any good. It's MLS needs to do a better job of making the incentive balance out with the playing time.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying, but sure, aren't the teams, if they're investing, like Dallas is obviously investing a lot of money into the academy, Philly claims to be investing a lot of money into the academy. I'm sure they are if they have that school going. But if they really want a return on investment, they're going to have to take a route like the Galaxy are doing and like all the MLS teams with these USL Pro teams to properly develop the players rather than, like you're saying, use it as a PR move. But, I mean, is there, I guess I'm trying to figure out, is there a responsibility of the player saying, hey, there's clearly no space for me on this senior team. Why would I ever sign a homegrown contract?
Sure, and a lot of guys are still turning down those contracts to go to college. That's still a thing that's happening. And ultimately, I'm all for personal responsibility, and the players have to be cognizant of what's best for them. But that's sometimes very difficult to know. And if a team comes to you and says, we're going to give you, I mean, it's not a lot of money in a lot of cases, right? I mean, we're talking about Jordan Morris getting the biggest homegrown contract offer in MLS history, and I'm sure it's not more than a couple, like $100,000 or in that area. It's probably six figures, which is a lot of money for a kid. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as though these guys are getting big contracts right out of the academy. So they have to decide, and look, it's a matter of personal belief. If you're 18 or 17 and the team comes to you and says, we want to sign you to a contract, you go, oh, well, that means they believe in me. I know I'm good. I can go and do this. And I don't know if I blame a kid for taking the opportunity. So it kind of cuts both ways, Mike.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. I guess I think we're going to be seeing more and more teams. There's going to be less of the PR moves because it does seem like teams are investing more in their academy. So why would they, if they want the best return on their investment for all the money they're pumping into these academies, they're going to have to find a way to properly develop them and properly create a path to the first team.
But what needs to happen, and this is an individual club issue as much as it's an MLS issue, but we need to reach that tipping point where it becomes important to get something out of the academy to make these kids into players, to give them the opportunity to improve, and that's more important than saving the cash on the salary cap by signing a guy who doesn't hit your cap. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, again, when you sign a player out of the academy, they don't take up a roster spot, they don't take up salary cap space, but they're a body, they're a guy that you have in training now, and your incentive to play them isn't there unless, like you said, now it becomes crucial to do that because of how much money we've invested in our academy. So it's incumbent on MLS to push teams to invest in their academies. And again, maybe it's not the league's responsibility, but at some point the teams have to feel the pressure to give these kids a chance to play, whether it's at USL level or MLS level.
Speaking about having the pressure of playing these people at the MLS level, I mean, aside from a team tanking early, though, is the playoff system not a little detrimental? Because if there's always that chance in the back of your mind that, hey, we can scrape in as a 6th seed and get into the playoffs, why are we going to give these young kids a chance?
Sure. I think that there are I think by nature, coaches are conservative. By nature, the playoff system creates a safety net that does not incentivize teams to experiment. That's true of not just who the coaches play, but who the owners and the clubs hire as coaches, or whether or not they fire a coach after a bad year. Well, or even through a bad first half of the season. Well, there's still a chance. We're only 8 points off a playoff spot. I mean, that leads to a pretty conservative league overall. So how we break up those thought processes, that's an interesting question, Mike. And I'm not for destroying something to shake it up. I mean, there needs to be some incentive. We should be very careful about identifying how to implement those incentives. I mean, you know, down in Mexico, they had an issue with young players not getting playing time, and they mandated players under 23 had to get a certain amount of minutes out of a club season. They took that away because eventually clubs decided it was in their best interest to play these kids, and they didn't need the rule anymore. Maybe MLS has to go in that direction.
I would hate to see that direction. Yeah, I would hate a imposed limit for young players, but I firmly think that USL is the answer. I think every MLS team needs to get on board, have a team that they control all player operations, and just get these guys minutes, let them develop, and I think it would really pay dividends.
Hopefully we see that coming. All I care about is Tommy Thompson playing. Can we just get Tommy Thompson on the field, please? Thank Dom Kinnear, play Tommy Thompson. Dom Kinnear is not a guy who plays young players, and that's why I worry about him and with Tommy Thompson at San Jose. I mean, Tommy's still a young player. He's 20 years old, but it's time. Get him in the game. Mike, appreciate the call.
Go River Dogs.
There you go. You got to say River Dogs. The River Dogs. All right, let's wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning on WorldSoccerTalk.com. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Eric Gomez for his excellent contributions today. We'll be back tomorrow. Big Friday. Oh, tomorrow we're going to do a season wrap-up spectacular, rapid-fire predictions for MLS Cup. That's coming. Stay tuned for that. See you then. Bye.